Studies done by the Medical Research Council, they've come the closest to causation and showing that actually certain firearm controls, particularly around domestic violence, have made a difference in terms of reducing femicide. But the issue here is that in terms of we look at victims of firearm violence, firearm homicides within South Africa is predominantly men. So we do need to be thinking a lot more about this. The problem also we have, and it's a common kind of global problem, is understanding what specific controls. So we've looked generally at the aggregated effect, and it looks like there is a strong correlation between implementing firearm controls in high violence scenarios such as South Africa and reductions in homicide. But we need to try and understand what are the specific mechanisms that are in place. And I just want to highlight a few and look at what data we have out there. Just go back to the first one, please, Timpani. On minimum age, and this is one of the things that changed within the South African legislation of 2004 when it was increasing the minimum age from 16 to 21. And in South Africa, there haven't been resources to actually look at this, and sort of academics were only starting to think about this, is what has been the impact of increasing the age? Are we actually able to determine if this made a difference? Because typically the thinking was if you reduce the age, we know that most perpetrators of firearm violence throughout the world as a global trend are young men. As I said before, most studies are based in the US because that's where the resources have been, and also they have a significant problem with firearm violence in particular cities. And the studies that have been done there, rigorous studies, have shown that minimum age licensing, so increasing or implementing such controls, will reduce access of children and youth to firearms, which will then reduce possible suicides, homicides, and accidental shootings. But unfortunately in South Africa we don't have any studies like this. I'm guessing Professor Sebastian van As will talk about the impact of his work and what his research has shown in terms of reducing children caught in the crossfire. But I'll leave that up to him to present his research. If you can go to the next, I'll keep it on that slide. Also, South Africa introduced competency testing. As we know, this is fairly innovative. Not many countries have it. There's no uniform approach. We know what it's trying to do is bring about more rigorous and more responsible firearm ownership and to try and reduce accidents and accidental shootings. Unfortunately, we don't know much about its impact. It certainly talks to having a positive impact, but at the moment, if we look purely from a research point of view, there isn't much to suggest there. Safe storage, we know we increased the regulations on that in South Africa. Also, US and Canadian studies indicate that safe storage in the home can reduce firearm homicides, suicides, and injuries, just in terms of preventing access. But also in South Africa, we don't know much about the use of safe. We just haven't done any studies on this. Background checks, we also know in South Africa and in many other Southern African countries that there's been an increase in the rigor of background checks, a lot more comprehensive. And we unfortunately don't have data on this either in South Africa, but the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act, which was implemented from 1993 in the US, and it was particularly around background checks in relation to handguns, focusing on criminals, people with kind of mental health conditions, drug addicts, juveniles, etc. And in 2013, and President Obama made a claim about 1.5 million wrong people that had been prevented from acquiring a handgun, and that was fact-checked by the Washington Post, and those figures were confirmed. So it's one of the clearest indications we have that that kind of some sort of background check can make a difference in certain contexts. Then where we're seeing a lot of research happening recently, which is quite interesting, and I think it's really relevant to South Africa, is this issue of policing operations. And within the US, and now in Colombia it's emerging, and also in a number of other South American countries, this focus on what's known as hotspots policing, which is a very technical, scientific approach to policing. You focus on a particular area, you use they make use of sort of public health language like dosage, where you kind of actually have specific types of patrols, specific types of interventions at specific times, and you actually have researchers who work with the police to study its intervention.